Humans never defeated Ice Age predators by fighting them. They defeated them by trapping them. Instead of matching claws with claws or strength with strength, ancient hunters built ingenious hunting systems that stripped away every advantage the world's deadliest predators depended on. This is how fragile humans turned the greatest hunters of prehistory into the hunted. The first trap ancient hunters mastered wasn't a hole in the ground, it wasn't fire, it wasn't even the spear. It was something far simpler, a path. Every apex predator depended on freedom of movement. A cave lion needed room to circle its prey before attacking. A saber-toothed cat relied on choosing the perfect angle for an ambush. Even packs of wolves required open ground to spread apart, surround a target, and close every escape route. Take away that freedom, and the predator immediately became less dangerous. Ancient hunters discovered that they didn't have to stop a predator, they only had to guide it. Instead of chasing dangerous animals across open country, they searched for places where the landscape naturally narrowed. A rocky canyon, a steep ravine, a narrow valley, a strip of dry ground between marshes. These places became nature's own funnels. Every animal moving through them had fewer choices. Predators understood this, prey understood this, so did the hunters. Generation after generation, they watched where animals traveled, the same river crossings, the same mountain passes, the same game trails carved into the landscape by thousands of hooves. Nothing moved randomly, everything followed the easiest route. That predictability became the first trap. Sometimes the landscape was enough. Other times, hunters made small changes. A fallen tree blocked one side of a trail, loose stones narrowed an opening, brush was piled into a low barrier. None of these obstacles could stop a cave lion. They didn't need to. They only needed to make one direction look slightly easier than another. Wild animals almost always choose the path requiring the least effort. Ancient hunters turned that instinct against them. Imagine a saber-toothed cat following deer through a familiar valley. It has walked this route dozens of times. Nothing seems different. The easiest path still lies ahead. Without realizing it, the predator has already entered the trap. Every step removes another option. The valley grows narrower, the rocky walls rise higher, turning becomes harder, running sideways becomes impossible. The hunters have not forced the animal has guided itself. That was the brilliance of the funnel trap. Modern archaeology shows that prehistoric hunters repeatedly used landscapes that naturally concentrated the movement of large animals. Across Europe and other regions, researchers have identified hunting locations where valleys, river crossings, and natural bottlenecks help direct animals toward waiting hunters. The principle was simple: control movement, and you begin controlling the hunt. The funnel trap offered another advantage: preparation. In open ground, a predator could attack from almost any direction. Inside a narrow passage, every hunter already knew where the animal would appear. Every spear pointed toward the same opening. Nobody needed to guess. Nobody needed to panic. The battlefield had already been chosen. For the first time, the predator was no longer hunting on its own terms. It was hunting on human terms. But guiding the animal was only the beginning. Even inside a narrow valley, a charging predator remained incredibly dangerous. The hunter still needed a way to steal its greatest weapon, its speed, and that meant turning the ground beneath its feet into the next trap. A funnel could guide a predator, it could limit its choices, but it could not stop a full-speed charge. For that, ancient hunters needed a different trap, one hidden beneath the animal's feet. Every apex predator depended on acceleration. A cave lion could explode into motion within seconds. A saber-toothed cat relied on overwhelming momentum to knock prey off balance before delivering its fatal bite. If that first burst of speed failed, the entire attack began to fall apart. Ancient hunters realized they did not have to overpower that speed, they only had to interrupt it. That simple idea gave rise to one of humanity's oldest hunting concepts, the pit trap. Unlike modern mechanical traps, prehistoric pits relied on almost no technology, no springs, no triggers, no moving parts, just gravity, a carefully chosen location, and patience. The location mattered more than the pit itself. Hunters rarely dug randomly across the landscape. Instead, they placed pits where predators were already likely to travel, at the exit of a narrow valley, beside a familiar game trail, near a shallow river crossing, at the entrance to a natural bottleneck. The funnel directed the predator. The pit waited where the predator had the fewest alternatives. Branches, grass, leaves, and loose soil concealed the opening. Perfect camouflage was unnecessary. The trap only had to remain unnoticed for one critical moment. A predator moving slowly might detect the disturbance. A predator charging with complete confidence often had no time to react. That confidence became part of the trap. Imagine a cave lion pursuing prey through a familiar corridor. Its attention remains fixed ahead. Every muscle prepares for the final sprint. The ground beneath its next step suddenly collapses. Perhaps one foreleg drops into the concealed hole, perhaps both front legs lose support, perhaps the animal only stumbles for a fraction of a second. The exact outcome matters less than what happens next. The charge is broken, momentum disappears. For the first time, the predator is thinking about balance instead of attack. That single moment is all the hunters need. They have spent hours preparing for exactly this instant. The pit was never expected to kill the predator. Its purpose was far simpler: steal the first attack. Modern archaeology shows that pit traps have been used by human societies in many parts of the world to capture large animals. While direct evidence for widespread Pleistocene pit traps targeting apex predators remains limited, the concept itself is mechanically simple and entirely consistent with prehistoric hunting technology. Even if a predator escaped the pit almost immediately, the trap had already succeeded. It forced the animal to stop, to recover, to reassess. Every second spent regaining balance was another second the hunters could use to move into position. This reveals an important pattern shared by nearly every prehistoric hunting system. Ancient hunters rarely depended on a single trap, they built layers. The funnel removed freedom, the pit removed speed. Each trap made the next one more effective. Together, they transformed a physically superior predator into an increasingly predictable target. There was another advantage. Unlike direct combat, the pit reduced danger before the hunters entered striking distance. Every meter the predator failed to cover during its charge increased the distance between claws and human bodies. Distance meant survival. That practical mindset appears again and again throughout prehistoric hunting. The objective was never heroism. The objective was reducing risk. By the time the predator recovered from the pit, another trap was already waiting. One that did not attack its body, but its instincts: fire. Unlike a pit, fire did not stop a predator, it convinced the predator to move. That was far more valuable. Every apex predator depends on making good decisions: where to hide, where to stalk, when to attack, which direction offers the safest approach. Ancient hunters discovered they could quietly influence every one of those decisions, not with weapons, with smoke. Large predators are masters of ambush. A cave lion disappears inside tall grass. A saber-toothed cat waits silently behind thick vegetation. The attack succeeds because the prey never sees it coming. Smoke changes everything. As it drifts through the grass, visibility begins to disappear. The scent of burning vegetation spreads across the air. The predator can no longer trust its hiding place. It has not been attacked, but it has lost confidence. That is exactly what the hunters wanted. Modern wildlife observations show that many large mammals react to smoke long before flames reach them. Some leave immediately. Others search for open ground. Many abandon familiar cover entirely. Ancient hunters almost certainly noticed the same pattern. Generation after generation, they watched animals change their behavior long before fire became an immediate danger. That observation became another trap. Imagine a cave lion resting inside dense grass near the entrance of a narrow valley. Hidden hunters are already waiting farther ahead. A small fire is lit downwind, not a raging wildfire, not an attempt to burn the predator alive. Only enough smoke to drift slowly through the vegetation. The lion waits, then stands. The air no longer feels safe. Its carefully chosen ambush has disappeared beneath a curtain of smoke. Remaining where it is now carries more risk than moving. So it leaves, exactly as the hunters expected. The predator believes it has made its own decision. In reality, the trap has made it for him. This was the genius of the fire trap. It did not force movement, it encouraged movement. That difference mattered enormously. A terrified predator behaves unpredictably. A cautious predator usually chooses the safest visible route. And if the hunters had already prepared that route, the fire had accomplished its purpose without ever touching the animal. Wind was the most important part of the entire system. Smoke follows the wind, not human intentions. A steady breeze carried the trap toward the predator. A sudden change in direction could destroy the plan completely. Experienced hunters almost certainly spent as much time watching the wind as they did watching the predator. Moving grass, drifting leaves, floating ash. Tiny clues revealed invisible air currents that determined whether the trap would succeed. Fire also removed one of humanity's greatest disadvantages: visibility. Dense vegetation protects predators far more than people. Once smoke and controlled burning reduced that cover, hidden hunters gained a clearer view, while the predator lost many of its favorite hiding places. The battlefield itself had changed, without a single spear being thrown. Archaeological evidence leaves little doubt that prehistoric humans mastered fire very early in their history. What remains uncertain is exactly how often controlled fire was deliberately used to manipulate apex predators during hunts. For that reason, many researchers treat fire-driven predator control as a plausible strategy rather than a universally documented hunting method. Even so, the logic is compelling. Fire did not need to kill, it only needed to influence behavior. That idea fits perfectly with every other hunting system ancient humans developed. Never challenge the predator's greatest strength. Remove the conditions that allow that strength to work. By now, the hunters had taken away freedom with funnels. They had stolen speed with pits. They had reshaped instinct with smoke. Every trap removed another advantage. Every step pushed the predator closer to a place where its overwhelming strength would no longer matter. That place had one purpose. It was where the hunt would finally end. The kill zone. The funnel guided the predator. The pit stole its speed. The fire forced it to move. None of those traps were designed to kill. They were designed to deliver the predator to one final place, the kill zone. This was the heart of the entire hunting system. A kill zone was not a giant trap hidden beneath the ground. It was a carefully chosen section of the landscape where every advantage belonged to the hunters. By the time the predator entered this place, the most dangerous part of the hunt had already happened. Not because the animal had become weaker, but because its options had disappeared. Imagine a cave lion moving through a narrow valley. Behind it, smoke slowly drifts through the grass. The rocky walls on both sides grow steeper. The passage ahead becomes narrower with every step. Nothing seems unusual. The lion simply continues walking. It still believes it controls the hunt. It doesn't. The hunters chose this place days before. They knew exactly where the valley narrowed. They knew where the ground became uneven. They knew where each hunter would stand. The predator had entered a battlefield designed long before it arrived. That was the genius of the kill zone. It didn't overpower the predator, it eliminated its choices. Large predators survive because they always have options. If one direction is blocked, they attack from another. If an ambush fails, they retreat. If prey escapes, they chase. Inside a well-prepared kill zone, those options begin disappearing. A cliff blocks one side, a river protects another. A wall of rocks narrows the only open path. Hidden hunters wait beyond the bend. The predator still searches for the safest route. The problem is, every remaining route has already been planned by someone else. Archaeological evidence suggests prehistoric hunters repeatedly selected natural bottlenecks where animal movement became highly predictable. Rather than constructing enormous artificial traps, they used valleys, ravines, river crossings, and narrow passes that already concentrated movement. Nature built the framework, humans completed the design. The kill zone also solved another problem: coordination. In open country, hunters can easily become separated. Some move too early, others hesitate. Confusion spreads quickly. Inside a confined space, everyone already knows the plan. Every hunter has a position. Every spear points toward the same opening. Nobody blocks another hunter. Nobody needs to guess where the predator will appear. Preparation replaces instinct. This may have been one of humanity's greatest advantages, not stronger bodies, better organization. Imagine 6 hunters waiting in silence behind rocks near the end of a narrow passage. They do not shout. They do not run toward the predator. They wait. Only when the animal reaches the exact point they prepared do they rise together. Not one hunter, all of them, at once. Suddenly, the predator faces something it has almost never encountered in nature. Multiple upright opponents standing together, holding long spears, blocking the only clear path. Its instincts demand movement, but every direction has become dangerous. Charge forward and face the spears. Turn around and retreat into smoke and confined terrain. Leap sideways and meet solid rock. For the first time since the hunt began, the predator is no longer making decisions. It is reacting to decisions already made by the hunters. That was the true purpose of the kill zone. It transformed the predator from the hunter into the trapped animal. But even inside the perfect kill zone, one challenge remained. Someone still had to face claws, teeth, and raw power. The final trap depended on the oldest hunting weapon humanity ever mastered, the spear. A wooden spear did not make prehistoric humans stronger than an apex predator. It made them harder to reach. That difference changed everything. A cave lion's greatest weapons were its jaws and claws. A saber-toothed cat depended on closing the final few meters before its prey could react. A giant bear relied on overwhelming force at close range. Ancient hunters understood a simple rule: the safest place was always just beyond that reach. The spear created that distance, but the spear alone was never enough. A single hunter standing alone against a charging predator was still at an enormous disadvantage. The spear became deadly only after every previous trap had already done its job. The funnel had removed freedom, the pit had interrupted speed, the fire had forced movement, the kill zone had taken away choice. Now, for the first time, the hunters and the predator faced each other on human terms. Imagine the cave lion entering the narrowest point of the valley. The hunters rise together, not one after another, together. 6 long wooden spears suddenly point toward the only open path. The predator hesitates. For millions of years, evolution had prepared it to attack one target, not 6, not a wall of sharpened points moving as one. The hunters never rushed forward. They held their ground. Every spear covered the space beside another. If the predator avoided one point, it exposed itself to the next. If it lunged toward a single hunter, the others attacked from the sides. The strength of the spear trap did not come from the weapon. It came from coordination. Modern archaeology supports this picture. The famous wooden spears discovered at Schöningen in Germany, dating to around 300,000 years ago. demonstrate that prehistoric humans were producing carefully balanced hunting weapons long before the appearance of modern bows or metal tools. These were not crude sticks. They were deliberately shaped, carefully balanced, built for serious hunting. That level of craftsmanship reveals something important. Ancient hunters prepared long before the encounter began. The hunt started while making the weapon, not while using it. A spear also changed the geometry of the fight. Without one, a hunter needed to enter the predator's killing range. With one, the predator had to enter the hunter's striking range first. Only a small difference in distance, but sometimes a small difference decides everything. This became even more effective inside the kill zone. The narrow passage prevented the predator from circling. The rocky walls limited sudden turns. The uneven ground slowed explosive movement. Every earlier trap quietly increased the effectiveness of the spear. Nothing worked alone. Everything worked together. Ancient hunters also understood another advantage. They did not need to kill with the first thrust. A wounded predator becomes slower, more cautious, less willing to charge. Each successful strike removed another advantage. One hunter stepped back, another stepped forward. The wall of spears never disappeared. It simply moved, again and again, until the predator could no longer fight effectively. This was not a duel, it was controlled pressure. Every hunter depended on the others. Breaking formation could expose the entire group. Holding formation protected everyone. Discipline became as important as courage. Hollywood often portrays prehistoric hunters surrounding predators in chaotic battles filled with desperate attacks. Reality was probably far more organized, more patient, more calculated. The goal was never to prove bravery. The goal was to survive. That philosophy appears throughout prehistoric hunting technology. Simple tools, repeated correctly, working together. The spear trap represents the final physical stage of the hunt, but it also reveals humanity's greatest innovation. No individual hunter needed to become stronger than the predator. The group became stronger than the predator. That was a completely different kind of power. Yet even the finest hunting system depended on one thing above all else: finding the predator before it found you. Because the greatest trap in prehistory did not begin with a spear, it began with a footprint in the mud. The most important trap ancient hunters ever built left no mark on the landscape. It wasn't dug into the ground, it wasn't built from stone, it couldn't be seen at all, because it existed inside the minds of the hunters. Long before a predator entered a funnel, long before it approached a hidden pit, long before smoke drifted through the grass, the trap had already begun with a single footprint. Every apex predator leaves clues behind. Fresh tracks pressed into soft mud, broken branches along a game trail, deep claw marks carved into tree trunks, bones scattered beside an old kill, the smell of a carcass carried on the wind. To most animals, these were simply signs of another predator. To prehistoric hunters, they were information, and information was the deadliest trap of all. The objective of tracking was never simply to find a predator. That would have been far too dangerous. The real objective was to discover where the predator could no longer fight on its own terms. Ancient hunters watched patterns instead of moments. One footprint meant very little. Hundreds of footprints told a story. Where did the predator usually cross the river? Which valley did it enter during migration season? Which water source attracted both prey and hunter? Where did it prefer to rest during the hottest hours of the day? Every answer reduced uncertainty. Every observation made the next hunt more predictable. Over months, even years, hunters built detailed mental maps of predator behavior. They learned that dangerous animals rarely moved at random. Like every living creature, they preferred routes that conserved energy. They revisited successful hunting grounds, they returned to familiar water sources, they traveled through the same mountain passes season after season. These habits were not weaknesses. They were efficient survival strategies. But ancient hunters quietly turned those strategies against them. Imagine discovering fresh cave lion tracks beside a muddy riverbank. The edges remain sharp, no rain has fallen. Nearby, deer tracks suddenly scatter in every direction. A few broken reeds disappear toward a narrow valley. The hunters stop. They do not follow immediately. That would place them exactly where the predator wanted them. Instead, they move ahead, not behind. They already know where the valley narrows. They know where the river bends. They know where the ground becomes uneven after heavy rain. Most importantly, they know where the funnel begins. The predator believes it is following prey. The hunters are preparing the battlefield. This was the genius of the tracking trap. It allowed humans to arrive before the predator, not by running faster, but by thinking further ahead. Modern wildlife research shows that large carnivores often establish regular travel routes, revisit productive hunting areas, and repeatedly use landscape features that minimize energy expenditure. Ancient hunters had no maps, no written records, no GPS. Yet through constant observation, they built an astonishing understanding of the animals around them. Every successful hunt added another piece to that knowledge. Every failed hunt corrected another mistake. Generation after generation, the landscape became easier to read. Water played a particularly important role. Every predator must drink, every prey animal must drink. River crossings, springs, and seasonal pools became natural intersections where the movements of entire ecosystems overlapped. Hunters did not need to search endless wilderness. They simply needed to understand where life inevitably gathered. Timing mattered just as much as location. Fresh tracks suggested the predator was close. Older tracks revealed established travel routes. Circling scavenger birds hinted at a recent kill. A faint smell drifting downwind confirmed it. Every clue answered one critical question, not "where is the predator?" but "where will the predator be next?" That question changed everything. Instead of reacting to danger, humans began preparing for it. Tracking was therefore much more than following footprints. It was prediction. It transformed hunting from a dangerous encounter into a carefully planned operation. By the time the predator finally appeared, most of the decisions had already been made. The route, the terrain, the traps, the positions, the timing. Everything was ready. The predator believed it had entered another ordinary day of hunting. In reality, it had walked into a plan that may have begun days earlier. By now, every trap formed part of a single system. Tracking located the opportunity, funnels controlled movement, pits stole speed, fire reshaped behavior, kill zones removed choice, spears delivered the final blow. Each trap depended upon the others. Together, they accomplished something no individual hunter ever could. And when every piece came together, the impossible became possible. No trap ever made humans the strongest predator, the system did. A funnel alone could not stop a cave lion. A pit alone could be avoided. Smoke alone could not kill. A spear alone could fail. But when every trap worked together, the balance of power changed completely. This was humanity's greatest invention, not a new weapon, a new way of hunting. Imagine an Ice Age morning. Fresh cave lion tracks appear beside a muddy river crossing. The hunters do not follow, they already know where the lion is going. One group moves ahead to a narrow valley. Another quietly clears loose rocks from the center of the trail while piling branches along both sides. The passage becomes just a little narrower. Farther ahead, a concealed pit is checked one last time. Fresh grass covers the opening. Nothing looks disturbed. Near the exit of the valley, several hunters choose their positions behind large boulders. Each knows exactly where to stand. No one speaks. No one needs instructions. The plan was made long before sunrise. Hours later, the cave lion appears. It follows the same route it has used many times before. The valley looks familiar. The game trail is unchanged. The easiest path still lies ahead. Without realizing it, the predator has already entered the first trap. The funnel quietly removes its freedom. The narrowing valley limits its movement. Turning becomes harder. Alternative routes disappear. Still, the lion senses no danger. Behind it, smoke begins drifting through the grass, not enough to start a wildfire, only enough to make the valley feel unsafe. The lion pauses, looks back, then chooses the clear path ahead, exactly as the hunters expected. Moments later, its front paws strike unstable ground. The concealed pit collapses. Perhaps the animal falls, perhaps it only stumbles. It doesn't matter. Its perfect charge has been broken. For the first time since entering the valley, the predator loses momentum. As it recovers, the hunters rise together. 6 long wooden spears point toward the only remaining opening. The lion searches for another route. A cliff blocks one side, dense brush blocks another, smoke fills the valley behind it. There is nowhere left to maneuver. This is the kill zone. The predator still possesses enormous strength. Its claws remain sharp, its jaws remain powerful. Nothing about the animal has changed. Everything around it has. Every trap has removed another advantage: freedom, speed, stealth, choice, distance. One by one, until the predator is forced to fight under conditions chosen entirely by humans. That was the true genius of prehistoric hunting. Ancient hunters never tried to become stronger than the world's greatest predators. They simply made strength irrelevant. Modern archaeology repeatedly reveals evidence of planning, rather than brute force. Carefully crafted wooden spears, repeated use of favorable landscapes, strategic hunting locations, coordinated group behavior. Each discovery points toward the same conclusion. The greatest hunting weapon of the Ice Age was never a single tool, it was intelligence applied collectively. No hunter could have built this system alone. No hunter could have survived it alone. The funnel depended on tracking. The pit depended on the funnel. The kill zone depended on terrain. The spear depended on every trap before it. Remove one piece, and the entire system became weaker. Keep every piece together, and even the deadliest predator on Earth could lose. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson archaeology has uncovered. Humanity did not rise because it possessed the sharpest claws, or the fastest legs, or the strongest muscles. It rose because it learned something no other predator ever truly mastered: planning. Long before the first spear was raised, the hunt had already been won. Many famous hunting traps were either invented thousands of years later, or have no archaeological evidence linking them to Ice Age hunters. These include giant rope net traps, giant cage traps, mechanical trigger traps, swinging log traps, poison traps for apex predators, and explosive traps. Some of these ideas are mechanically possible, some were used by much later civilizations, others exist only in fiction. But based on current archaeological evidence, none can be confidently identified as standard hunting methods used by Pleistocene hunters against apex predators. The real ingenuity of Ice Age hunters was never building complex machines, it was turning the landscape itself into the perfect trap. Ancient hunters never became stronger than Ice Age predators. They simply took away every advantage those predators depended on. One trap, one weakness, one calculated decision at a time. That is how humanity changed the balance between hunter and hunted.